Okay, we're going to make a start. So welcome to the Women Pivoting to Digital webinar. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. This webinar series is a part of an effort by the City of London's Women Pivoting to Digital Task Force to address talent shortages in digital roles across financial, professional services, and technology sectors by helping employers to find, hire, and retain untapped talent, utilizing mid-career women from non-technical backgrounds as a solution. Today's webinar is Unlocking Potential, How to Implement Skills-Based Hiring in Your Team. My name is Alexandra Scheller, and I'm delighted to be your host as we speak with some of the most informed minds and advocates for digitally enabled, future-ready workforce. So to set the scene, according to an Open University analysis of the UK skills landscape in their 2025 Business Barometer, 52% of organizations are currently facing a skills shortage, and 40% of those say that skills shortages will increase the workload on existing staff, while 32% of organizations expect skills shortages to worsen over the next 12 months. This session will explore the benefits and challenges of employers adopting a skills-based hiring approach, with a particular focus on female career changers who often have valuable transferable skills that may be overlooked through traditional recruitment filters. Using this approach can address existing candidate shortages and expand the talent pipeline. The webinar will run for about 30 minutes, and there will be time for questions. Please do send questions via the chat function as and when you think of them. Our fabulous colleague Stacy will help get them answered towards the end of the program. So as we get started, we're going to take a quick poll of the audience to see who we have in attendance today. And the question is, how familiar are you with skills-based hiring? So hopefully you will have a poll popping up for yourselves shortly, and then we'll just take a quick look at that. Okay, I see the poll. And if you guys would just do us the favor and a quick click, we can just get a general response. Okay, terrific. So we actually have a group that spans the entire range. We have a number of folks who have some familiarity with the approach and are looking to consider how and whether to use it within their organization, and a few folks here who are brand new to the topic. So as we go forward, we will do a little bit of level setting just to make sure everybody has a baseline from which to enjoy the discussion. Our three themes today are the benefits and challenges of transitioning to a skills-based hiring model, insight into identifying and assessing transferable skills in women from non-technical backgrounds, and practical tools and framework to assess skills. So before we dive in, we have three wonderful panelists with us who I'm going to have introduce themselves. So Victoria is Director of People and Organizational Development at Opencast. Please share with us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Thanks. So my name is Victoria. I look after people development and organisational development at Opencast. We are a digital consultancy working mostly in the public sector, looking after digital transformation projects. So hugely technical group of employees working on all sorts of interesting work. And we have been excited to be here to talk about our skills transition through our recruitment and our development practices. So since joining the organisation 2 years ago, I've been very focused on moving us towards a skills-based approach. So very happy to be sharing what we have been doing with you all today, and also to learn from all of you some hints and tips of how we might continue to improve our approach moving forward.
Thanks very much, Victoria. Peter Brock, over to you. He's the Global Head of Skills at the Center of Excellence at Finastra.
Hi, everyone. Peter Brock. Finastra is a global fintech company based in London. I myself am based across the pond in Toronto, Canada. I've been at Finastra for 11 years in learning and development. The last 5 years really focused on the pivot towards and the acceleration of skills, like a skills-first L&D framework, and angling towards, becoming skills-based organization at Finastra. So it's been a really interesting journey, and I'm really excited to be here today to share some of my experiences and some of the things we've done around skills at Finastra.
Thank you very much, Peter. And Claire Tunley, the Chief Executive of the Financial Services Skills Commission. Would you please introduce yourself and the work of the FSSC?
Thank you. Great to be here. Yep, I'm the Chief Exec at the Financial Services Skills Commission. So we're a membership body for firms in the financial services sector who are looking to close skills gaps. And we work collaboratively with our members to help better identification of skills needs now and in the future, and then take action to close those skills gaps. So a lot of the work we do is around a skills-based approach. And helping firms build that within their firms and learn from each other about how to overcome some of the challenges. In terms of the Commission as well, we're a very small organisation, less than 10 employees, but we do take a skills-based approach to our recruitment and implement some of the practices that we talk about with our members. So great to be here and learn from others.
Terrific. Thank you so much. I'd like to stay with you for a moment because we do have some folks who are new to the topic, and it would be wonderful if you can share with us just at a high level what skills-based hiring is and who's it for.
Sure. Well, as you outlined in your introduction, lots of firms are saying the skills gaps, skills challenges hold back their organisation. So I have a figure of 60%. I think yours is slightly different, but I think that the general message is that a lack of skills and talent is holding back firms from developing, from being productive, from transforming businesses, adopting new tools, etc. So a skills-based approach is a really different way of looking at managing talent, recruitment and retention, and breaking down roles from the traditional knowledge-based job profiles and people profiles that go with those roles, and thinking about it as more of a skills approach. What do people need to be able to do in those roles, and moving away from saying what do they need to know. So we can teach people the knowledge, and if people have a certain level of capability, that knowledge can be layered on quite easily. But the capabilities around understanding things like critical thinking, relationship management, etc., are much more skill-based and behaviour-based. So skills-based approach is really thinking about the doing as well as the knowledge in a job role, in tasks that make that up. So it can apply for any firm of any size. Like I say, with the Commission, we're fewer than 10 employees, and we have members in our membership with over 60,000 employees. So it can apply to firms of any size. Wherever you're recruiting, that's where you can apply it, or it could be an internal recruitment, it could be development, and it could be external recruitment. So it really can be applied wherever you want, and it doesn't have to be organisation wide. We've been looking at it for particular individual roles where we've been growing and adding to our headcount. Other firms look at it from an operational functional approach. Some look at it organisation wide. But it really is about assessing candidates on the capabilities that they need to have, the skills they need to have to perform in their role. So it is just about looking at roles in a very different way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to stay with you for just a moment because, as you mentioned, you have the benefit of hearing from a wide member body within the financial services industry. Can you share some of the benefits that some of your members have experienced who are either transitioning or already adopting this approach?
Absolutely. We're still doing a lot of work to understand where some of these benefits land, but the initial impacts are very much around the sort of people challenges around retention and recruitment and progression. So they are very immediate. If we can understand the capabilities that are needed in a role and where people have those skills and capabilities, we're better able as an employer, better able to move people across the business. Businesses are changing, operations are changing, things are constantly shifting. Tasks that we need people to do today, we won't need them to do tomorrow. There's new things coming in that we will need them to do. They will need skills and capabilities. So being able to understand where you're going and what you have in your business at the moment in terms of skills allows that transition, and we can move people across to roles much more easily if we take a skills-based approach, keeping people just out of a sort of vertical and more into the horizontal of a business. it's a better skills match. It helps with recruitment as well. It gives you a wider pool of talent, getting away from, criteria such as someone must have 5 years experience in this particular role. Actually, do they? If they've got some experience in a particular role, but they've got the skills, could they move across into it? And actually that brings different ways of thinking as well. So there's an immediate benefits around people in the business. But there is a more strategic benefit as well, where if we look at the direction that firms are taking, where business strategy is taking, and layer on that to skills, particularly at the moment with such tech disruption, what do we need people to be able to do to take us into the future? So, a few years ago, we were talking about coding. That's not being talked about anymore. There's AI that can do that. But actually, what do we need people to be able to do with new technologies? Is it that assessment, that criticality, that data understanding? And some of these are foundational skills that can apply in many different situations. So if the industry and the way we work is changing so fast, what are those things that will equip us in a good way to have the people we need to weather whatever changes are coming? I think someone said to me that the wave of disruption is going to get bigger, but we can't fight it. We just need to ride it. So what are the skills that we need to enable people to ride that wave? And I'll give you a very quick example. One of our firms that's been placing this, they have managed to almost eliminate external recruitment for the time being, because they are so well aware of the skills that the job roles they have are needed and the skills that their people have. They are able to match people up really, really clearly into roles. And where roles are sunsetting and the roles may not be around for in the next few years, they're able to prioritize those people to shift into roles with a training plan that goes with that individual of where they've got a gap. So firms are actually able to utilize what they have in their business as well as save money on recruitment, etc. So there's some real big benefits to this approach.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's a very rich topic, and we may touch on it throughout the conversation. Given that you've just shared a really clear example of where it worked, I'd like to draw on Peter. I think you also may have a case study where someone from a non-technical background has been able to take on a role within the organization, and maybe share a little bit about how that's come about and the results.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got an example actually from my own learning content design team. So it's a fun one to share. So I have this person on my team, Anna, and she's from a non-technical background, but she's really thrived in a tech-enabled role. So she's an instructional designer, and she's got like strong skills in expertise in learning design, adult learning principles, course authoring tools, etc. Like that's her core thing. So back in November 2022, when ChatGPT launched, our executive team at Finastra, they were quickly prioritizing scaling AI training across the company. And the focus was on foundational topics like what is Gen AI, what are the ethical considerations, how do you write effective prompts, etc. And Anna really took the lead in designing these foundational learning experiences, which is great with her skill set. But in doing so, she built really advanced knowledge in Gen AI, including a lot of hands-on experience with Microsoft Copilot, which was available to all of our employees in a secure environment. And what made her approach unique was how she was able to integrate Gen AI into her everyday work and thought process. During stakeholder consultations, when she's doing her learning needs analysis, she would experiment with Copilot to explore how it could help employees perform tasks more efficiently. And then she designed training programs on the back end of that with practical exercises tailored to those real world use cases. Now, this wasn't a one-off. She applied this approach across multiple projects over time, and the results were like super impressive. In terms of business impact, we saw that there was significant cost savings driven by efficiency gains, and there was a big uptake in adoption of Gen AI and Copilot within the organization, which was part of the goal. Now, recognizing her unique contribution, the Skills Center of Excellence team and leadership in the people team, we created a new role specifically for her, and we called it Learning Solution Architect. And it was a promotion. It came with a higher pay grade. And in this role, she's now focused on identifying really high impact role-specific use cases for Gen AI that align directly to our corporate goals, which is a massive thing for this year. And what enabled her success, though, it wasn't really her technical expertise. What positioned her for the role was her transferable skills. So learning needs analysis, problem solving, creativity, strategic thinking, adaptability, stakeholder management, empathy, decision making, all these things. These strengths allowed her to conduct really comprehensive workflow and task analysis with various teams to identify those opportunities for co-pilot integration, and then to go and design innovative learning solutions to continue that drive of the Gen AI adoption in everyday work across Finastra. So, I'm super excited about that, given that it was right there in my team where it happened. And she's a real success story. I'm really thrilled that she was able to take on that new opportunity based on just having the right skills and the right transferable skills to be able to do that.
She also sounds like someone who is a champion for your culture and way of doing business and is continuing to elevate your strategy. So what a wonderful one to share. Thank you so much for that. I'd like to actually stay with you for a moment and kind of rewind the tape, because you've just given us an end point. But at some point, you had to gain buy-in from your leadership team to sort of start with this framework and this journey. And can you give us just a flavor of what that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, our leadership, they were on board fairly early. Finastra began our skills and skills first talent and L&D journey back in 2019, 2020. So we had a good head start on it. But what really solidified their commitment to it was the growing competition for top talent in financial services and fintech, especially in like key roles, software engineering, product management, sales. It was a battleground for a period of time in there where it was really challenging to get the talent. When you can't attract top candidates due to various reasons, compensation and other factors, the focus shifts to growing talent internally and hiring for skills and potential, not just the credentials. So that's where skills-based hiring really shone for us, by using behavioral, scenario-based questions tied to those critical skills. It helped us to assess that potential instead of just looking at the traditional things, especially in those transferable skill areas and the intangible areas. That's where it really came into play. And sometimes we found the best hire isn't the one who checks every box today, but the ones who show that strong potential for growth. And if someone's at 70% now, but they've got the mindset and the capability to reach 90% fairly quickly, well, that's a massive win. And we found that to be very effective for us.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It sounds like it's all been a rosy picture, but there are always speed bumps along the way. Are there any challenges or concerns that you were able to overcome? And can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of them was common hurdles, and I think you'd probably hear this talking to anyone who's embarked on this, is getting hiring managers on board, especially those who've relied on traditional methods for years, focusing heavily on job titles and degrees and years of experience and all those things. And that's because, it's familiar, it's worked for them. So the key, what we found is to reframe the approach in a way that feels very practical and valuable to them. So the first thing was to remind managers that they'll still get a solid sense of a candidate's background from their CV or their LinkedIn profile. So instead of repeating that in the interview, they can use skills-based questions, scenario-based, behavioral prompts, et cetera, to uncover how the candidates applied their skills in real situations. And that we found that to be a way more dynamic way to understand capabilities. And secondly, and this is the more, the more hard tactics, was we introduced a dedicated skills-based hiring learning program for managers. And it was required for the managers to attend this program. And it was a blended experience. It was part e-learning, part virtual workshop, where they learned the benefits of skills-based hiring, as well as walking through our talent process cycle end to end and step by step. And together with the recruiter, they learned how to co-create a tailored interview guide and an evaluation rubric using our internal tools. We have a Finastra Skills Career Navigator, as well as an interview guide software tool to create that guide. And what this did is that it really took pressure off the managers to come up with questions on their own. The guide is very structured. It's time sensitive to the duration of the interview. It's aligned to the role. So they're really supported, not burdened by the whole process. And once they kind of saw that, that really gets them to buy in quickly, well, fairly quickly. I hadn't hired in a long time, in a few years, until recently. And I went through this process and I was super impressed. Like, just focusing on skills-based questions, behavioral scenarios, and use cases and things like that. It really drew out those transferable skills from people, and you could see the things like the creative thinking they put into it, how they manage stakeholders, how adaptable they were. I don't know, it just had a different sort of feel to it, and I found it really, really effective. But really, when it comes to those hiring managers, we also gave them the ability to customize the guide. So once it was created, they could remove questions that they didn't think would be helpful, and they could add their own in as well. And that flexibility gave them a sense of ownership and control, which really helped to make adoption easier and much smoother. So that was really helpful. So I think that's a common barrier, the hiring managers just getting bought into it. So hopefully that helps to hear a few thoughts on how you can get past that.
Thank you so much, Peter. Yes, it definitely does. I suspect we'll get some questions later on that we can come back to dig more into your organization's experience and the hiring guides and things of that nature. But I am going to move us along in the interest of time, and we're going to shift gears a little bit into assessing transferable skills and focusing on women from non-technical backgrounds. So I'm going to turn it over to Victoria and ask you, organizationally, how are you guys looking at identifying and measuring the value of transferable skills and experience from other sectors?
Yeah, I think this links really nicely to what Claire and Peter have said in terms of I think that for the organisation, for us, the value of it is around sort of getting that mindset shift at a leadership level and hiring manager level. And Peter's given a great description of how to do that and some of the barriers and challenges to doing that, because I think that shift is quite tricky in terms of very kind of experienced focused hiring, in terms of if you don't have X number of years experience, then how can that barrier goes up almost immediately in terms of not necessarily understanding that the transferable skills in themselves mean you're almost separating out in a lot of ways the transferable set of skills, the context knowledge, domain knowledge, and it's really around trying to kind of shift that mindset to get the organization as a whole and decision makers to see the value of transferable skills. And I think piloting it in places is quite useful to then sort of demonstrate the value that almost I think sometimes we can see it as a little bit of a risk to take someone in a role where you don't have the years of experience. So I think demonstrate it would be I think Peter's given us an example of that. So just to sort of talk about that from an organizational perspective of identifying the value, I think we have to show the value and sort of start somewhere. And then from a metrics perspective, and in terms of bringing in skills-based approach, I think we look at it through the lens of mobility within the organisation. And if we look at either skill adjacencies, and we have quite a number of success stories of where you might belong to professional practice like product management, and what are the adjacencies with things like service design, for example. And actually the base there, the transferable skills sit across all of our consulting practices, and then the time to proficiency and the upskilling on the technical side is actually that can be done at pace. So we look at it through the perspective of measuring how much sort of adjacency we have of people working in different roles, belonging to a professional practice, but actually taking up assignments that are technically different by using their transferable consultancy skills. So we definitely look at the numbers of people we have moving around within the organisation. We would look at things like career satisfaction through employee surveys, in terms of when we talk to our employees, do they have a challenging, meaningful career where they can develop and grow with us? So you would also look at things like retention. So have we looked at how we can remove barriers to progression through looking at actually adjacent routes to development as well? So there's also another angle to it around, I'd look at this in my own team in terms of when we've had people come to us from different backgrounds, the sort of continuous improvement and almost innovation, that trusting the transferable skills, and we can get people up to speed with the technical skills and the context, means that are we being more effective and efficient because other people have brought new ideas and different ways of doing things. So I think the main one for us is that internal mobility aspect. That's how we would measure whether our skills approach is working, that we can move people through different types of careers and different technical disciplines if we focus on helping them develop their transferable skills as the base.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It's so interesting. I'm eager to ask more, but I am going to, in the interest of time, continue to move us along. So I'm going to turn to Claire actually about some practical steps that hiring managers can take to define transferable skills for their digital roles. So if you'd help us with that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely, and I think it's once you've convinced managers to go on this journey, then you've got to do the hard bit of actually defining what you mean by skills and what that means for a particular role. So one of the starting points is that definition and coming up with a skills framework or a skills taxonomy that works for the organisation. Not only technical skills, but behaviours as well, and other knowledge. And aligning on that, because one person's critical thinking can mean something else to someone different. So there does need to be alignment there on what we mean by proficiency. Happily, to help with that, at the Commission, we're working with our members. We created a framework of future skills, so 13 skills, technical and behaviours, which have got proficiency levels in there, and it's available on our website. It's open. We've made it accessible to anybody, even if the people aren't members, as a starting point. And that's always a good place. It's not a blank sheet of paper, but it can provide that starting point of what do we mean by these skills. There's other skills that might be added onto it. Some firms have added skills, some have just taken our framework, some have taken bits of it. But it's a starting point to say, if we're talking about this job role, what do we actually mean by skills? And you need to have that alignment, because then you know what you're testing for. And all of those tools that Peter talked about for recruitment managers to use, the competency-based questions, the examples of how these skills have been applied in the business, and that's where you get your kind of business context in. You need to have that agreement at the beginning. So there is a foundational piece of getting started, and that is working with the job profiles that you've got at the moment and aligning that and trying it in a couple of areas. It will take a bit of work, a bit of structure, a bit of preparing those tools, but once you've got them in place, they can then be rolled out more broadly. As Peter says, other firms have done the same that Finastra have, and created a guide, a kind of commitment, something for recruiting managers to give them the tools to do this, so they don't feel like having to invent it themselves.
Thank you so much.
I think that's one of the most practical things to start with.
Well, and I'm actually going to keep us on tools, frameworks, and implementation, our third topic, because I think there is a lot that we can talk about here. And Claire, you mentioned, and Peter have also mentioned, sort of technology platforms and different frameworks. So Peter, would you speak a moment on technology itself? I know there's actually a lot out there in the big universe, but maybe you can narrow it down for us just a little bit.
Sure. I mean, one of the barriers, I'd say, is having a lack of access to reliable skills data, for one. So without tools or frameworks like an enterprise skills taxonomy or benchmark role profiles, it's hard for managers to really know which skills truly matter for a role, especially the transferable ones. Some things you can do to help that along is simple tools, shifting from role-based to skill-based job descriptions. If you don't have your own bespoke taxonomy, there are publicly available ones, like the World Economic Forum has a skills taxonomy that you can access. Burning Glass Institute has a series of skills first hiring tools, and that includes a taxonomy type tool. So that's very effective as well, to be able to understand the skills matched to roles in the industries. various industries, and then being able to target those transferable skills in your interviewing and hiring. You can do easy things like leveraging Gen AI tools, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot. You can surface those top transferable skills for a given role or industry. So that's a very fast way to get at it and very accessible. There is also the aspect of training managers in structured behavioral interviewing, ensuring that they can uncover how candidates have applied the skills across the roles. And we talked about using scenario-based sort of assessments and behavioral assessments. That stuff all comes into play. And when it comes to the actual newfangled technology, there's all kinds of AI-based tools out there that have exploded on the scene in the past year, really. And they are powerful and offer a way to scale hiring by providing very automated, objective evaluations of candidates' skills. And really what you get from them is scalability, right? It's a big advantage. You can screen thousands of applicants at once. It's feasible for big organizations to assess the skills fairly efficiently that way. You can do simulations. You can have virtual labs, customer scenarios, allowing candidates to demonstrate their abilities in more realistic job settings. So that's key. As well as, I guess, digital portfolios can be very handy. They really help to showcase real work samples and various achievements that someone might have. And it can highlight talent from non-traditional backgrounds, which is a benefit as well. And that, supports diversity and inclusion in hiring. So that's a key one as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that there's a piece around ensuring that if you're leveraging these tools, about how to do it in keep upholding ethical standards and things like that when doing it. And one big piece is around the design of it. So inclusive assessment design. This looks at avoiding gendered language, ensuring accessibility for people with disabilities, removing proxy variables like names, pronouns, even various educational backgrounds that could unintentionally introduce some bias. And then obviously the big one is having human review cycles, right? So complementing any automated processes and assessments with human review to catch any issues and add, better context to the whole process.
That's incredibly comprehensive, and I think we could continue this conversation all day, but I know that we can't, unfortunately. So, Victoria, what's the reaction been from employees within your organization to an adoption of a skills framework and these kind of learning pathways?
Overall, very positive. In terms of the main feedback has been that I think in terms of skills-based approach, the clarity that skills bring compared to competency models sometimes, where you are really measuring that one unit at a time. And people, if you do, as Claire said, if you get your definitions right and consistent across the organisation, I think that's been the reaction from our people in terms of the level of clarity that they have around what to develop, grow, focus on in terms of how that aligns with their sort of professional development plan and career plan. So I think that has been positive. I think the managing the change is quite significant in terms of it is quite different in terms of approach, and the level of detail required in a skills framework is striking the balance of what is enough and what's too much in terms of you could have a very, very long taxonomy and list of skills where it's just incredibly overwhelming in terms of where to focus. So we've been focusing on working with employees to get that right. And I'll be open to say that we have in some places got that right, and maybe we haven't in others, but it's about launching the framework and then listening to employees and taking their feedback and then releasing sort of updates and new versions to that and involving them in that process. But it is quite a different approach to sort of having a job-based competency model where you might have skills, methods, tools, behaviours, and it's quite a big mix of capability. Whereas sort of tidying that up, if you like, in a very kind of clear and structured way has been really helpful. But very different. So giving people time and the right support through line manager support, and in our workforce we have a model of coaches for our consultants that they access to work on their performance and development. So making sure you've enabled the people that enable the people to use the frameworks is really important as you go along, and starting small and then adding would also be a thing I would recommend, and not launching an enormous taxonomy all at once. We've taken a two-stage approach where we've got our transferable skills taxonomy, and we've partnered with a sort of expert organisation to build that taxonomy, and then our technical framework, we launched that as a second part of that, and then we'll look to join those up. But we've done that in stages just to not overwhelm people with the level of change.
So one of the things that we haven't exactly touched on, but it may be evident to our audience from the conversation, is your language is going to shift. So people's vocabulary flexes or expands or takes on a new set of words, right? Capabilities, taxonomy, like all of these kinds of things. But I think you'll find that much like values and culture and strategic direction and mission, as you go up the adoption curve with this kind of approach, more and more people use the language and it becomes a common way for people to communicate. And there's something really wonderful about hearing that within an organization, because you get that kind of like for like where you might not have previously, or that's something that I've experienced.
I'll just come back, sorry, Alex, on
Yeah, sure.
just to build on Victoria's point. I think one of the things that we hear back from our member firms is the benefit and the report from colleagues and employees of the clarity of their pathway, because we started a piece of work a few years ago on learning culture and how to build a learning culture in an organisation to encourage that sort of investment and love of learning. And what was very clear is the lack of clarity that some employees feel makes them feel more insecure about where their direction is going. So the skills-based approach in saying, this is how your role is evolving, or even if your role is likely to be sunsetting and perhaps won't exist in the future, but this is where we see you going in the organisation. And that kind of curated learning journey for individuals, saying this is where we want you to go, and this is the steps you need to take to get there. You know, you're level 3 on relationship management, you need to be at level 4, and this is how we're going to help you get there. Really create that reassurance for individuals that the company was investing in them and their future, that they could get on board with that journey as well. And it felt like that they had the buy-in to that learning pathway and that development pathway from a skills point of view, not just I'm in my vertical and it's knowledge based. So although there was initially some nervousness about it, actually what's happened with that clarity, people have really got on board and are able to invest in their own pathway, which I think has been a real benefit, which is hard to measure. When you asked me about the benefits at the beginning, it's a lot more intangible, but people have reported that that's a real benefit.
And Claire, just staying on that, it sounds like that lends itself to seeing more mobility, right? Because that's what would end up happening. So can you just say a little bit more about that?
No, absolutely. So like I gave the example before of one of the firms that's seen huge internal mobility, and Victoria and Peter have both talked about it, of retaining talent, but being able to augment and enhance and shift that talent depending on where the business needs are, and do that in partnership is massively beneficial, because no one's skills are not needed anymore. They just are needed in a different context and maybe need to be enhanced to respond to sort of current challenges and future challenges. So absolutely, it's boosted internal mobility, which also builds better culture in the organisation and boosts that retention. Not everyone will be up for the journey. There's definitely cases where someone says, I'm here, this is my expertise, I'm not going to shift. But generally, when you build that offer and provide that clarity of where they're headed, people come with you on that. So The only downside of the internal mobility piece is there's a point when you've used up all the skills in the organisation, so you have to start recruiting externally again. It's not, you can't forever sort of mine the skills pool in your own organisation. There will still be that need to have churn and shift, but it's massively helpful for internal mobility. I'll give you an example of what the chief exec of one of the very big banks in the UK said to me. He said, my ideal employee is that blend of someone that's got financial services knowledge, because they need that. They've got technical expertise and understanding because we're working in a tech environment, but they've got the capabilities and behaviours to implement all of that and add value. And that's one of the, to say that that's the biggest skills challenge that CEO of one of our big banks has got is quite telling. I thought it'd be we need more software developers or data analysts or AI specialists. No, it was about bringing those different elements, FS knowledge, technical expertise, and behaviours together. And actually moving people around was what they wanted to do. They wanted more of that internal mobility because they could see the benefit of bringing different skill sets and different perspectives together. And I thought that was quite telling.
Thank you so much. We just have a couple of more minutes. We've sort of moved into questions. So, Peter, when working with hiring managers and providing that training, are there common areas that you found folks struggled with perhaps, or needed a boost in confidence in order to take on the skills-based approach?
I think really it was just getting behind the whole process. Like, because it felt so different, it was a matter of getting through all the theoretical part of the learning, understanding the steps, understanding in depth the benefits of it, because not everybody's been exposed to discussing and talking about skills-based hiring and the benefits of it and why you would want to do anything different, when in reality everyone has felt successful in the past in their hiring, and maybe they haven't been hiring in the last bunch of years, so they haven't seen that some things have changed out there and you can't always find the technical skill sets you're looking for, and you have to think differently. So it was really just, it was almost more of putting them through the process in order to enable a mindset shift. That was the most critical part. And those facilitating the course did a really good job to do that, to bring it back, not just always focusing on the content of the learning, but and that's why we had workshop after the e-learning. We said that was critically important to answer all the questions and remove the objections or handle the objections they would have. So I think that was the biggest part in terms of getting them on board and making sure that they could get behind it. And so far it's been a fairly smooth process, and it's been fairly effective.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. We are just about at time. I'm going to give one last rapid fire question to you each, and then have just a few closing remarks and thank yous. So, one piece of advice to those at a small, medium, or large organization who want to get started tomorrow. What should they do? Claire.
Yeah, I think just try it. Like I say, we're a very small firm, so we haven't introduced a skills taxonomy, but what we did is our most recent recruitment, we took a skills-based approach, and it was really telling just how it made us think more about the role and what people need to be able to do rather than what they've done in the past. And I think it got us a better hire as a result. So I think just try it, just think about skills rather than experience-based hiring in your next recruitment.
Amazing. Victoria.
Very similar. I think linked to that, be clear on your own organisational definitions and use best practice for what is skills, what is experience, what is knowledge, etc., to then be able to try it, so that you can sort of challenge yourself on experience-based versus skills-based. So even at a very high level, get those kind of definitions clear for the organisation to be able to pilot and test something.
Amazing. And Peter?
Yeah, I mean, same thing. I mean, you just have to dip your toe in. I dipped my toe in 2019, 2020, and it was like, hey, can you create a skills taxonomy? And I had to Google what exactly is a skills taxonomy and how would you use one in an organization. But really, it's starting small and just getting going. So it's those couple of things I mentioned. I'd say is, starting with shifting from role-based to skills-based job descriptions, something like that. Like, so highlighting the skills, make sure you have that in your job descriptions and focus some questions on those skills. Leveraging those public taxonomies. They're there for you to look at, just see what you can get from it. Using Gen AI tools, as can help. Getting even managers starting to do behavioral type interviewing, like shifting it a little bit, and putting more sort of scenario-based, behavioral-based questions in your interview. So those are pretty quick things that can be implemented.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. And for everyone on the line, we hope you found today's session valuable and ask that you share it with a hiring manager, an HR colleague, or business leader who may be interested in this topic. Please help us expand our reach by sharing the recording on LinkedIn or tagging someone who would benefit from listening to it. I hope you have enjoyed this conversation, and it's been as stimulating for you as it has been for me. And I want to thank the City of London Women Pivoting to Digital Task Force for sponsoring this. And they will be posting it on the actual task force website so that it is available from here on out. I would like to thank you, Claire, Victoria, and Peter for joining us today and sharing your views. And I would like to also invite everybody to join us on this journey in the next topic, which is build your workforce from within, designing reskilling programs to close the UK's digital skills gap. Please sign up via the link on the webpage or the forthcoming LinkedIn post. And we look forward to welcoming you soon. Thank you again.